in my opinion, Microsoft's forced migration to Windows 11 has been a complete and total disaster. Windows 11 compatibility sucks. And I think this whole thing might even end up being one of the worst ecological disasters of our time, as Microsoft forces tons of computers out of service, generating massive amounts of e-waste.
April 2026. Over 240 million computers worldwide have been quietly declared obsolete by Microsoft, not because they're broken, but because Windows 11 won't run on them. And the users whose computers do run Windows 11, they're discovering their operating system is stuffed with ads, tracks their behavior by default, and ships data to Microsoft servers, whether they agreed or not. Here's what Microsoft won't tell you. You never actually needed Windows 11. There are 3 Linux distributions that replace it completely. No technical expertise required. Let's expose exactly what's going on. What Microsoft is actually doing to your computer.
Microsoft has been doing their damnedest to absolutely ruin Windows 11. You've seen it, I've seen it, we all know that it's real. It's feature creep, it's surveillance malware baked right into the operating system. It's advertising at the OS level, fundamentally broken and largely untested updates or malignant behavior.
Before we talk about solutions, let's talk about the problem. Because the reason people are escaping Windows 11 isn't just about computers being too old to upgrade. It's about what Windows 11 actually does once it's running on your machine. Windows 11 is filled with ads. You can find them in the Start menu, the Microsoft Store, the lock screen, the Settings app, and even in File Explorer. And Microsoft doesn't just show you ads, it collects data to target those ads based on your usage habits, app activity, and interactions with the operating system. Think about that. You bought a computer, you paid for it. And the operating system is showing you advertisements and profiling your behavior to make those ads more effective. That's not a feature. That's a product treating you like inventory. Windows 11 assigns each user a unique advertising ID that tracks activity and preferences across apps and even some websites. If you sign in with a Microsoft account, your browsing history and device activity can be aggregated and shared across devices and platforms. It also constructs detailed logs of app usage behaviors, supposedly to optimize system performance and recommendations. And here's the part that should make every regular user angry. Microsoft has maintained that the collection of required diagnostic and service data cannot be fully disabled by the average user. There's a no off switch for required data. You can turn off some of it. You can go hunting through menus that are deliberately hard to find. But the core data collection, it runs whether you like it or not. These settings are all turned on by default. Most people don't know they're even there. That's the operating system you're being pushed toward. Now, let's talk about what you can switch to instead. Why Linux now? And why it actually works. For years, Linux had a reputation for being complicated, something only programmers and tech enthusiasts used. That reputation is outdated. Something genuinely different is happening with Linux adoption in 2026. People are not choosing Linux because they believe in open source philosophy. They are choosing it because their hardware still works, and they do not want to throw it away or pay for a new computer just because Microsoft changed the system requirements. The numbers back this up. Linux desktop market share hit 4.7%, the highest it has ever been. That represents tens of millions of real people using Linux as their daily computer. Not hobbyists, not engineers, regular people who got tired of being monitored and monetized by Microsoft and decided to leave. There are hundreds of Linux distributions. That is part of the problem. Every Best Linux Distros article throws 10 or 15 options at you, each with unfamiliar names and subtle differences that matter only to people who already know what they want. So we're not doing that. We're giving you exactly 3, the only 3 that can fully replace Windows 11 for a normal user. And we're going to be honest about what each one does well and where it falls short. Distro number 1, Linux Mint. The honest choice.
Linux Mint is the single most recommended distro for people leaving Windows. It looks like Windows, it feels like Windows, it comes with media codecs and drivers already configured out of the box, and its entire philosophy is stop bothering the user. They've had a very hard day.
Linux Mint is the one most Windows refugees land on first, and there's a very good reason for that. It looks familiar, not because it's trying to trick you, but because it was genuinely designed around how Windows users already think and work. Linux Mint version 22.3, codenamed Xena, shipped in January 2026 with a redesigned application menu, a new system information tool that shows your hardware details without opening a terminal, and support through April 2029. Long-term support matters. You're not adopting a system that's going to abandon you in 2 years. Linux Mint uses around 1.2 gigabytes of RAM at idle after a fresh boot. If you want something even lighter, the XFCE edition consumes around 850 megabytes of RAM. Compare that to Windows 11, which regularly consumes 4 to 5 gigabytes of RAM just sitting there doing nothing, running telemetry, Copilot, OneDrive Sync, and all its background processes that benefit Microsoft rather than you. Who is Linux Mint for? You want the smallest possible retraining cost. You prioritize a conservative update model. You are migrating a family PC or small office where predictability matters more than design bells and whistles. This is the distro you install for your parents, the one that just works and stays out of the way. No ads, no surveillance, no forced updates that restart your computer at 2 a.m. Just your computer doing what you tell it to do. The one honest caveat: Linux Mint requires you to find and install most of your tools yourself. It gives you the basics and lets you build from there. That's a strength for experienced users and a minor adjustment for beginners. Distro number 2, Zorin OS, the smoothest transition.
Moral of the story is, if you're used to Windows or you're used to macOS, I don't think you'll find it too difficult with a bit of effort to move to Linux. I would once again recommend Zorin OS for people who are used to Windows or macOS and want an easy transition to Linux.
If Linux Mint is the practical choice, Zorin OS is the polished one. It was built specifically to answer one question: how do you make switching from Windows as painless as humanly possible? Zorin OS version 18.1, released April 15, 2026, includes a Zorin Appearance app that lets you switch your entire desktop layout with one click. You can make it look like Windows 10, Windows 11, or Mac OS, depending on what feels natural. That one feature alone removes the biggest psychological barrier most switchers face: that moment of opening a new operating system and not recognizing anything on screen. But Zorin goes even further than looks. If a user double-clicks a Windows program file, Zorin will often recommend Linux replacements or Surface guidance rather than just failing silently. It also ships with tools that let you sandbox Windows applications. So, some of your existing Windows software can actually run on Linux. The project saw 1 million downloads in the 5 weeks after Windows 10's end of support, which tells you something about who its audience is. These aren't tech enthusiasts experimenting. These are regular people escaping a sinking ship and grabbing the most familiar-looking lifeboat available. Zorin OS uses roughly 1.6 gigabytes of RAM on a fresh boot. Still far more efficient than Windows 10 or Windows 11, but slightly heavier than Linux Mint. That means if you have a genuinely older machine from 2012 or 2013, Zorin Lite is the version to grab. It's designed for exactly that scenario. Who is Zorin OS for? You care about immediate visual familiarity and a polished day one experience. You want built-in migration helpers and phone integration. You prefer a curated experience where much of the guesswork is handled for you. It's the distro that holds your hand through the transition, without being condescending about it. The honest limitation? The paid Pro version at $48 unlocks a significantly better app bundle and extra features. The free version is genuinely capable, but Zorin is the one distro on this list where paying does unlock a meaningfully better experience for users who want everything set up immediately. Distro number 3, Pop_OS. For users who want performance. Pop_OS comes from a company called System76 that builds Linux computers for a living. That matters. They're not academics building a distro for fun. They're a business that needs their operating system to actually work for real users every single day. What makes Pop_OS stand out from the first two is performance and gaming. This is the Linux distro that gamers switching from Windows reach for first. The reason is simple. Pop_OS has dedicated versions built specifically around NVIDIA and AMD graphics cards. You install it, the graphics drivers are already handled, and your games work. No configuration hunting, no driver headaches. The performance difference compared to Windows 11 is not small. Independent benchmarks consistently show Pop_OS delivering 10 to 15% better frame rates than Windows 11 on identical hardware. The reason is the same across every Linux distro. Without Microsoft's background surveillance services, Copilot monitoring, and constant telemetry uploads eating your CPU, your computer has more resources left for the things you actually want it to do. Pop_OS also handles multitasking differently from the other two. It includes a built-in tiling window manager, a way of organizing your screen that makes working with multiple windows simultaneously significantly more efficient. For anyone who does creative work, coding, research, or anything that involves juggling multiple applications at once, this feature alone is worth the switch. Who is Pop_OS for? Gamers who've been told Linux can't handle gaming seriously, creative professionals who need strong performance, power users who feel Windows 11 is actively fighting against their workflow. If your main frustration with Windows 11 is that it slows your work down, Pop_OS is built specifically to solve that problem. The honest caveat, Pop_OS has a slightly steeper learning curve than the other two. It's not difficult by any objective measure, but it assumes you're comfortable exploring. It's less hand-holding than Zorin, less conservative than Mint. In exchange, it gives you more control and more raw performance. The thing Microsoft doesn't want you to know, here's what ties all three together. Microsoft's data collection isn't making Windows better. Windows 11 still has a broken start menu, more friction, and fewer options than Windows 10. Experts agree. It's about ad delivery, data mining, and locking you deeper into their ecosystem. Linux Mint, Zorin OS, and Pop_OS collect none of that. No ads, no behavioral tracking, no forced Microsoft account, no recall screenshotting your activity, no Copilot watching what you type. Your computer works for you and reports to nobody. All three outperform Windows 11 on speed and privacy. Completely free. And you can test any of them from a USB drive